On Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My parents forbade me from attending family events because I hadn't got married by the age of 28. But what my grandfather did on his 30th anniversary completely destroyed them. I, 28, female, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend Andrew, 29, male, for 4 years. For the last year and a half, we have had to maintain a long-distance relationship because I had to move to another city for the project I'm currently working on. But despite the difficulties, we have managed to make it work, and we plan to get married in the future, although right now we are focused on our careers. Marriage is something we have talked about, but it can wait. It's not exactly a priority for us, and I think that's perfectly fine. I don't understand why my parents have such a problem with this. Over the last few months, every time I met with them or we spoke on the phone, they constantly brought up the subject of my wedding. They told me that I should get married because I've been with Andrew for 4 years and I'm almost 30. So if I want to settle down, start a family and all that, now is the right time. According to them, there's no reason to wait so long. I've tried to explain to them several times that right now our careers are more important. I can't return home before my project is finished, which means I'll probably have to stay here for another 6 to 9 months. When everything is complete, I'll return home. Then Andrew and I will talk about our future and maybe get engaged. Then it will take us a couple of months to plan the wedding. But we're also fine taking things slowly. For us, it's just not that important. It's just a formality we have to comply with, and that's it. We know we love each other, and we don't need a marriage certificate to prove it to anyone. I don't understand why my parents can't understand this. They were still making a big fuss, and I was getting tired of them, so I started calling them less and ignoring them more. Last week I called them to congratulate them on their 30th wedding anniversary and to tell them I would be coming home for the weekend party. Once again, they brought up the subject of my marriage and started telling me that I should seriously consider leaving my job and things like that. I felt they were overstepping their bounds, so I told them that this was why I didn't talk to them so much anymore. We had a pretty big argument. In the end, they told me not to bother showing up at any more family events until I had a ring on my finger because it was getting embarrassing, and they were tired of telling everyone that we were just dating and hadn't even gotten engaged yet. I was really hurt when they said that, but before I could respond, they just hung up on me. I called Andrew afterwards and poured out my feelings to him. I ended up crying a little because what they said was really hurtful, but he comforted me and I felt better. Anyway, I went home for the weekend because I had already planned it and I wanted to see Andrew. On the day of the party, I was at home. In the afternoon, about 2 hours after the celebration had started, my grandfather called me to ask why I hadn't arrived at the party yet. He said it wasn't like me to be almost 2 hours late, especially to an event organized by my parents. So I had to tell him the truth, and I guess he could tell from my voice that I was really hurt. My grandfather, my father's father, and I are very close, so maybe I should have anticipated what would happen. After our conversation, he simply said "I see" when I finished explaining everything, and then he told me he would call me after the party. I thought it was strange that he didn't say anything else, and later I found out exactly why. Because a few minutes after talking to me on the phone, he decided to give a speech at the party. He started normally, congratulating my parents and all that. Then he started talking about me, about how my parents had been pressuring me and what they had told me, which resulted in me not attending the party. My parents were telling everyone that I was just running late. That's how they explained my absence. But then my grandfather told everyone the truth, and my parents didn't look good in the real story. Everyone gave them disapproving looks during my grandfather's speech. And to top it all off, he ended the speech by telling everyone that my parents had called me an embarrassment for not being married at 28, just because they felt they were being judged by some relatives with nothing better to do than criticize other people's lives. But in reality, he was more proud of me than he had ever been of my father, because at least I had managed to stand on my own 2 feet without needing my father's help to get a job. He called my parents fools and said they would be nothing if their parents hadn't supported them all the time. Unlike me, they never focused on their work or had a sense of finance. They were always too busy trying to impress people. So for years they depended on their parents to support themselves, their children, and even to buy their house. He told them they should be ashamed of themselves instead of being ashamed of me. Then he left, and my parents immediately called me to yell at me. This happened a couple of days ago, and they are very angry with me because they think I should have been more tactful. As I know my grandfather's impulsive nature, they say I have made the situation much worse. They want me to convince my grandfather to issue a formal apology to everyone in attendance, as people left quite quickly after the incident, feeling very uncomfortable and embarrassed after that speech. But personally, I don't think my grandfather did anything wrong, and I don't think he should apologize. I don't feel bad about telling him the truth either. And even if I had known he would act like that, I would have told him the truth anyway. Am I the idiot for not wanting to help my parents clean up their image? Addition. I don't think I was very clear about what exactly my grandfather revealed about my parents. Basically, my parents got married very young, around the age of 24. At that time, they were just starting out in their respective careers and depended a lot on their parents for practically everything. By the time I was born, my parents were struggling financially because they were not good at saving. They had to have their parents bail them out several times, and after I was born, they became even more dependent on them. And from what I've heard, they were pretty shameless about it. Obviously, I have never mentioned this subject with my parents because I know it's embarrassing for them. Now, of course, my father has managed to establish himself as a successful businessman, but it has taken him many years and a lot of help from his father, my grandfather. My grandfather allowed my father to take over his company just a couple of years ago, but only after he proved himself competent enough to run it. I have no interest in that kind of work, and I must say that everything my grandfather said about my self-sufficiency is absolutely true. After graduating from university, I have received very little help from my parents and have never asked for it. I am proud of that, and I am definitely proud of not being like them. Of course, I've never held it against them because I don't want to be that kind of person, but I'm glad my grandfather said something, and I don't understand why I'm supposed to feel bad about it. It's not like he was lying. They're trying to make me feel bad for prioritizing my career over marriage, and it's true that they care a lot about what other people think of them, which is strange, considering that they should be more concerned about me than about other people's opinions. Anyway, there are certain things that are very private, and my grandfather decided to expose them, and basically that's why my parents are angry now. Update 1. Hi, I'm back at work. I was only home over the weekend, and of course I've been in touch with my granddad since the party. I didn't mention it in my original post because I forgot, but yes, I did talk to him about what happened, the speech he gave and all that, and as expected, he didn't regret anything. He was quite frank and upfront about the whole thing. He told me that he was furious after our conversation during the party and couldn't believe that my parents had said something so mean to me without bothering to correct the mistake. It's not as if they didn't have the time or the opportunity. They still had a couple of days before the party to talk to me and make things right, to apologize and retract. But they chose not to, because for them, what a bunch of relatives thought about me and my marriage was more important than my achievements and what I was accomplishing on my own. My grandfather said he couldn't stand that because to him it was just gross and pathetic. When I told him that after he left, my parents called me, yelled at me, and tried to blame me for everything, saying that I should have been more tactful and shouldn't have told them about our argument while I was at the party, because I should have known that he might react like that. He told me that I don't need to worry about what they think, because they only think about themselves. If they don't care about my feelings, then there's no reason for me to keep thinking about what they want, which seems fair to me. I already knew that I wasn't going to try to convince him to apologize, because he has nothing to be sorry for. And I don't need to apologize either, because, well, they can think whatever they want. I don't care. I'm not going to talk to them anymore until they apologize to me, and they'll have to mean it. Until then, I'll keep them silenced and I won't respond to any messages or calls. It's for my peace of mind. Update 2. It's been about 2 weeks since I last spoke to my parents. 2 weeks have passed since that party, and since then, I haven't bothered to check any of their messages. Today was a quiet day at work, and finally, out of curiosity, I decided to read them. Most of them said they were very disappointed in me, that they never expected me to behave this way. They called me ungrateful, selfish, vindictive, and everything else. It didn't particularly hurt, it just made me feel discouraged. Anyway, I didn't pay much attention to them and went back to work, but it remained in the back of my mind. By some strange coincidence, today was also the day my parents chose to contact Andrew. I don't understand why they felt the need to do it, because it was quite embarrassing, as they dragged him into this mess for no reason. They called him and started berating him, saying that they had always treated him like their own son. They had accepted him into the family without question and had always treated him well. So now, as their future son-in-law, it was his duty to talk to me and make me answer to them. They told him he owed them, and Andrew, being a rather shy and non-confrontational person, didn't say anything to them. He just listened to them and then hung up after telling them he would talk to me. And he did talk to me. He didn't try to pressure me or anything like that, but from his voice I could tell that he was really offended by the way my parents had spoken to him. I know what must have happened. I know they obviously didn't directly insult him, nor did they try to, but they have a way of talking and belittling people that is really irritating. I can attest to this firsthand because I have been on the receiving end of that treatment. I was really upset because they decided to involve Andrew in this when he really had nothing to do with it. This is between me and my family, and yes, he definitely is my family, but in a different sense of the word. And more importantly, it's very strange that they think he can influence this because it's not like he's my boss. In the same way that I'm not my grandfather's boss, we can't force each other to do things. I don't understand why this is such a difficult concept for them to grasp. I was already a bit annoyed by the messages I had read earlier, and then this happened and I got even more angry. So I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. I decided to call them so I could talk to them and clear things up once and for all. When I called them, they answered immediately, and before they could say anything, I told them that they really had no right to involve Andrew in this. This was our problem, and I would appreciate it if you could behave with dignity and keep it between us. I also criticized them for belittling Andrew and telling him that he owed them something when that wasn't really the case. They hadn't done anything extraordinary for him. They had simply been kind, as they would be to any guest. That's just being courteous. They hadn't done anything to show him that they had really accepted him into our family. Whether we wanted to get married right now, or whether we wanted to get married in the future, or whether we wanted to get married at all, that's entirely our business. They have no reason to interfere. This whole future son-in-law thing needs to end. I told them that they really need to take a step back, and it's strange that they still haven't learned their lesson even after everything that's happened. They need to stop obsessing about my wedding, about my love life in general, and just leave me alone. They started arguing with me, saying that I was being unreasonable, that my actions had really affected them, that I should feel sorry about it, but instead I was behaving quite badly towards them. And this was not what they expected of me. So I simply repeated what my grandfather had told me, that they had also hurt me before by saying that I shouldn't bother to show up at any event if I wasn't committed, but they didn't care about that. So now I don't care either if something hurts them. It's unreasonable for them to expect me to care. When I said this, they started trying a different strategy by trying to make me feel guilty. My mother started to cry on the other end, saying that she had always wanted the best for me, and she didn't know that her intentions would be misinterpreted in such an extreme way. She was obviously exaggerating and deliberately trying to manipulate me, and I wasn't going to fall for it. So I told her that if she really wanted the best for me, she would have understood my position and wouldn't have tried to put pressure on me. But that's what she had been doing all along. She and my father didn't care at all about what I wanted. They just wanted to impose their decisions on me and expected me to follow them blindly without thinking for myself. But I'm not a sheep, and that's their problem. They just wanted me to do what they said, as I used to do when I was a child, without trying to form my own opinion or think for myself. And now that I'm not obeying them unquestioningly, suddenly I'm a bad person. I reprimanded them at the time and reminded them that over the past few months, I had told them several times that I now have to be away from home, and things are difficult enough for me as it is, because although I work most of the day, the work is quite exhausting. Managing a team is not exactly easy. I do my best. But even so, at the end of the day, I have to go back to an empty house, and I really miss everyone and also my home. Obviously, I'm not happy about being away, but I have to do it because I want to advance my career. And I understand, and Andrew understands too. That's why we've been able to make it work, because he understands and respects my decisions. And if he's fine with it, I don't understand why it's so difficult for them. Being my parents, they should support me even more because they know I'm doing something difficult. Instead, they had the audacity to tell me to quit my job and come home so I could get married. And then what? They hadn't even bothered to think about that. I told them that I didn't want to end up like them, borrowing money from my parents for every little thing, not thinking about the future, and only worrying about myself and what other people think of me. That's not who I am, and I have no intention of ever becoming that. And since they couldn't respect that, they should just stay out of my life. That left them speechless. And finally, I think after that, my mom was crying real tears because I had hit them where it hurt the most. After a few seconds of silence, my dad started telling me that what I had said was unforgivable, and I either retract it or they would never speak to me again. I told him I would choose the latter, and that was it. They hung up and blocked me everywhere. I wish I could say I was upset about it, but I really don't care. They were constantly irritating me and made it clear enough that they don't respect my boundaries one bit. So now, I don't really feel like I need to keep them around. They should probably learn what it means to respect people. And then maybe I'll consider having a relationship with them again, but for now, I think it's best if we don't talk to each other. Update 3. It's been a couple of days since my parents blocked me from everywhere. After that, I called my grandfather and told him everything, and he said he was proud of me, so I knew I had done something right. Then I focused on work and forgot about it. Today, my grandfather called me in the morning and told me that there had been a lot of drama with my parents the previous evening. Apparently, my parents had shown up at his house in the afternoon and had started accusing him of instigating me all the time. And now, they have changed their strategy. Initially, they had been trying to get him to talk to my grandfather and convince him to apologize publicly to everyone at the party for his speech. But it's been a while since then, and I don't think anyone would care about an apology at this point. And he also made it quite clear that he wasn't going to apologize under any circumstances. So they gave up on that. Besides, the fact that I wasn't going to try to convince him to apologize either must have had an influence. Anyway, that was a failure. So now they're trying to get him to convince me to apologize. They showed up at his house, accused him of provoking me and turning me against them, saying that he had brainwashed me. And now they want my grandfather to talk to me and make me apologize and make things right with them. When my grandfather said he wasn't going to do that, and that everything I had said was true, so they should probably reflect and improve themselves instead of trying to make me apologize, my father started fighting with him. And it got pretty nasty. He literally started screaming in my grandfather's face, and he got so close that my grandfather told me he thought he was going to push him or something, but that didn't happen. My mother pulled him back, but he kept yelling at my grandfather. He said horrible things about him. And the most absurd thing is that even after all that, they still expected me to talk to them and help them. After a while, my grandfather told them he would call the police if they didn't leave. And then they finally left, but it was worrying. My father's behavior alarmed me, and I decided I had to warn Andrew not to let them in if they tried to show up and bother him. However, when I called him, I realized that it was a bit late, and this had already happened, because apparently, just the previous afternoon, they had tried to show up at our place and talk to him. He told me exactly when they had arrived, and I realized that they must have gone to our house right after my grandfather kicked them out. With him, however, they were very polite and not at all aggressive. He let them in, and they apologized to him for all the things they had said the last time they spoke. They told him that they really considered him a son, and they were happy that we had been together for so long. But all they had wanted was for us to get married, as they believed that was the right path. And they complained a little about how I just didn't understand that they always wanted the best for me, and they told him that I was being stubborn. Of course, he defended me, and instead of arguing with him, my parents simply agreed with everything and told him that they were from a different generation, so they also had some different opinions. But apart from that, everything was fine. Then they told him about the argument we had the last time we spoke, which he already knew about because, obviously, I had told him about it. And then they said that although they had been quite rude, what I had said was even worse, and I had been very disrespectful to them. Once again, they were hinting that they wanted me to talk to him and make me apologize, but Andrew simply pretended not to understand and said nothing. After a while, I guess they got tired of talking to him because he wasn't saying what they wanted to hear, and they left. After saying that they would really appreciate it if I could get him to talk to them and apologize, he told me that he had intended to call me after the visit, but by then it was dinner time, so he got busy. He was about to call me this morning, but then I called him myself. After talking about what had happened, I told him that the next time they bothered to contact him, he shouldn't talk to them at all, because clearly this is not going to lead anywhere. The more we interact with them, the more they take us for granted and keep bothering us, and I don't think anyone wants that. He told me that the next time they try to show up, he's just going to pretend he's not home. We had a good laugh about that. But honestly, I think it might be for the best, because I don't think my parents are going to forget any of this anytime soon. Update 4. A few weeks have passed since my parents showed up at my grandfather's house, and then at my house. After that, they didn't try to talk to my grandfather anymore, but they did try to contact Andrew, and he, after that particular visit I mentioned in my last update, wouldn't let them in. He told them there was nothing he could do for them because I had made my decision and I didn't regret it. And I didn't think I had any reason to regret what I had said. So he wasn't going to talk to me or try to convince me to apologize to them or whatever it was they wanted me to do, which is why they kept showing up again and again. He was very direct with them. And he told them that his patience was running out, and after pretending not to be at home the first 2 times, on the 3rd visit, he finally confronted them and told them that he would call the police if they didn't stop bothering him. So my parents yelled at him and told him that they wanted nothing to do with him anyway, and that we would regret treating them like that when we finally decided to get married, and they wouldn't give us a penny to pay for our wedding. I don't understand why they thought that was a threat, as the only reason I'm working so hard is so that I can afford everything I want, and I haven't taken money from my parents in the past. I have no intention of doing so in the future. So if they stay away now, it will be better for them because at least they won't have to compromise their dignity every time.